So you want to study in China, huh? Well, there's a lot of options out there, so this video is all about simplifying the process and boiling it down to just a couple questions that will answer the big question, where should you study in China? In case you're new here, my name is Lauren and I actually lived in China for most of 2016, first in Nanjing and then in Beijing. I was there on an S1 visa, which if you know anything about the visa system, that is a family visa. And I was able to do that because my husband was actually studying Chinese in China, so I just kind of tagged along and I did blogging and stuff while I was there. I get emails asking me a lot of questions about China, and where should I study in China comes up a lot, so I'm hoping that this video helps some of you guys out. I also get emails from a lot of different Chinese language programs and Chinese schools in China that are looking for promotion through this channel. And through the process of trying to vet those schools each time they would email me, I realized how difficult it can be to know who to trust in this process. So for 2 years now, I have been extremely picky and I've said no to every single one of them. Because I would never recommend something to you guys that I wouldn't recommend to close friends or family. But a few months ago, I had a school called Omeda Chinese Academy reach out to me. And after doing a lot of research on them, and I even had my husband do research on them, I realized not only are they a legit school, they're freaking awesome. And they happen to be in one of the most beautiful parts of China with good air quality. So big thank you to Omeda Chinese Academy for sponsoring today's video and for helping me kind of simplify this really complicated process of asking that question to yourself, where should I study in China? We kind of broke it down. They helped me work through the content so that there's just 2 simple questions that you guys have to answer that'll get you started off on the right foot and really narrow down the list of schools that you're interested in. So the 2 big questions are, do you want a university or a private school? And do you want a big city or a small city? I'm gonna use Omeda as our example for a private school because they're so awesome and they're sponsoring today's video, but I'm gonna do my best to not make this sound like an ad. They're just really awesome. And if you find yourself interested in that school at any point during this video, I have links down below where you can find a lot more information about them. While I was filming this video, I forgot to mention that Omeda Chinese Academy wanted to extend a very special offer to you guys with a discount code. So if you apply to Omeda Chinese Academy, definitely be sure to use the discount code on the screen right now. It is laurenwithoutfear. Easy to remember. I also have it in the description below, so you can just copy and paste it real easy. It is not case sensitive. So laurenwithoutfear, be sure to use that. Anyways, back to the video. All right, so let's get right into it. University versus private school. So the biggest plus side to going to a university is that it tends to be cheaper. It's generally around 9,000 to 15,000 renminbi per semester, which is about 1,500 to 2,100 US dollars. At a university, you can get that typical dorm life experience. However, you will probably be housed in an international student dorm, which actually sounds kind of cool. But the downside is that usually, from what I hear, Chinese friends are not allowed to enter the international student dorm. And the other weird thing is that they tend to lock the doors and not allow anyone in or out at a certain time. I also remember Ling Ling from Lena Around. If you have not been following her journey, I'll have her channel linked down below. I am so inspired. Just go check it out. But anyways, I remember when she was studying, I think it was at a university in Beijing, she was saying that the Ais, so like it's kind of like means aunties, but they were sort of also like the cleaning ladies and house moms. It's like a all-encompassing role. They would come in and clean, and they would even do it while they were sleeping. University campuses also tend to be larger, which can be great or bad depending on your priorities. A larger campus means that you have more dining options, there are more people, there's bigger classes. So this does mean that you have the chance to network with more people and you have just more options for everything, but it also means that you can feel like a head of cattle. You can just feel like a number in the crowd because there are so many people. Universities tend to run by semester, so you need to be able to start on a specific date. It's like a typical college, and then you will stay there for like 4 to 5 months. And programs can be kind of strict with attendance. So if you miss a class, you're expected to show up with a note that explains why you were absent. And if you miss a certain number of classes, you can get penalized for it. So it's more of a like typical like school, like you are at school and you are a student. And let me explain how private schools are different. So private schools, the downside is they tend to be a little bit more expensive than universities, but they usually have smaller classes, so you get more one-on-one teacher-student time, and they can actually oftentimes tailor the curriculum to your personal needs. For example, Omeda offers a bunch of different plans, including an intensive plan, a standard plan, a part-time plan, And they offer a full tailored plan, which basically means they're customizing your whole curriculum based on what you are looking for. And this is part of the reason I can't really give you exact numbers for how much it costs to go to Omeda Chinese Academy. You kind of have to apply or contact them to get a better idea of numbers because it varies so much based on, whether you're staying there for a week and doing a part-time program, or you're staying there for a year and you're doing an intensive program. It really depends on what you're doing while you're there. Also, if you're looking to make it a little bit more affordable, definitely check out their volunteer partner program because you can save money on accommodations, on food, and even on your courses. So if you're really dying to go to a private school but you're on a budget, that's a really good option. At schools like Omeda, you can arrive and leave whenever you like. It's not a semester system, so you can come on whichever week you want. You can stay for 1 week, you can stay for as long as you like. It depends on what you're looking for. They're also not as strict with the international versus Chinese student policies. For example, Omeda Chinese Academy is actually right next to Omeda English Academy, which, as you've probably inferred, is where Chinese people study English. And both academies come together and eat family style in a cafeteria, and even have the choice of living together in the dorms, which provides a really awesome environment for language exchange and cultural exchange. So it really is like this immersive, all-inclusive experience at Omeda. And like many other private schools, you have the option of shared room, private room, hotel room. Your accommodation options are very open. A university is going to be a little bit more restrictive. So the second question is big city versus small city. So I have experience living in big cities in China. First, I lived in Nanjing, which is a second-tier city. It has about 11 million people living in the metro area. And later I moved to Beijing, which is a first-tier city, and there are like 24 million people living in the metro area. So basically you can think about it like Nanjing is sort of the size of like New York City, and Beijing is the size of like nothing the US has ever seen. It's just like ridiculously huge. Big cities tend to be more expensive, but there's more variety and there's just more options. There's just more there. So I put together my pros and cons. Here's the pros. There's a never-ending amount of things to do. You can find your own little community even though it is a massive city. There's ancient history everywhere. There are lots of foreigners, aka potential friends who are in the same boat as you. You're like trying to figure out China, but you're from the West. It's kind of nice to have like peers like that you feel like you have something in common with right away. Anyways, huge variety of food, like huge variety of food. I was biking distance away from multiple international markets in Beijing. There's also a huge variety of shopping. I don't really care, but I actually did kind of care when I realized that I needed to go to an H&M to buy clothes that actually fit my large American body. Actually, now that I think about this, I think I got this in H&M in Beijing. That's weird. And there is a huge variety of sightseeing to do. Now here's my cons of living in a big city. High cost of living. Dear God, that Beijing apartment was so much more expensive than it should have been for how bad it was. I'll have that video linked above if you'd like to see what my apartment in Beijing looked like. It was really bad. It's really time consuming to get around the city. The air quality can be horrific at times in both Nanjing and Beijing, actually. It can feel like a concrete jungle. I think the respite is in the parks, which are very common in China. You're usually living in a high-rise building, and then there are really large parks nearby. So the parks are kind of the respite, but there's still a lot of people in the parks. So it just feels like a concrete jungle sometimes. The rich versus poor gap in big cities in China is painfully obvious. And there's definitely this like rat race vibe, money, career, entitlement, move forward quicker than everyone else. You want to be successful, that kind of stuff. And lastly, this is probably really obvious, but it is very densely populated in Nanjing and Beijing. If you're going to a small city in China, it's probably going to be much less expensive, definitely compared to Beijing, and it's probably going to have much higher air quality, depending on what small city you're in. Omeda Chinese Academy is actually in Yangshuo, which has wonderful air quality because there is a river that runs just alongside the Yangshuo County. It's the Li River. It's gorgeous. It's also surrounded by mountains, so you get that like mountain breeze. It actually rains there. There's like fog in the mountains. I don't know. It just sounds really magical. I really want to go. Actually, Yangshuo, like quick sidebar, is now at the top of my wish list for China. It's not like a new thing though, because we actually did try to go to Guilin one time. It's a long story. We missed our train. It was really disappointing. But Guilin is similar like look to Yangshuo. They're not very far apart from each other. But small cities tend to have less variety and just less options overall. There's less of everything. So it really depends on your preference. So I'm gonna use Yangshuo as the example of a small city. There are about 300,000 people. So compare that to the 24 million or 11 million in Nanjing and Beijing. It's just vastly different. It's also much more of a small town feel. So people are gonna be riding bikes and scooters everywhere rather than driving cars or taking public transportation. And the people at Omeda told me that students can ride bikes along the river and like through the countryside every night if they want to. Like, what the heck? That is so different than my experience in China. And even though Yangshuo is in rural China, there are still over 1,000 foreigners there. So you can find these small cities that have foreigners in them. And there's also some foreign restaurants. You're not gonna get the same level of like foreign goods available to you as you would in Beijing, but there is Taobao. That's something to consider. You may not have like immediate access to things like that, but you may have access to it if you can wait a couple days or a week for it to arrive by delivery. Now there are high-speed trains that run to Yangshuo. Just to give you an idea, even the small cities like this in China have high-speed train access, which basically means you have access to all of China by public transportation. You really don't need to worry about like feeling stuck and never being able to leave. Omeda also does organized trips around Yangshuo and around that area so that you can go experience local stuff with other students. So to wrap it up, if you're gonna answer that big question, where should I study in China? The first two questions you really need to answer for yourself are, do you want a university or a private school? And do you want a big city or a small city? Now, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you choose? And are there any points about each of those options that I didn't touch on in this video? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about Omeda Chinese Academy, I have links to that down below. And if you apply, don't forget to use the discount code. That's laurenwithoutfear. It's also in the description below. I also have links to a bunch of the videos that I made and blog posts I made while I was living in China if you want to learn more about the experience I had living in Nanjing and Beijing. Best of luck with your search to find the perfect school in China, and definitely send me an email if you have any questions about China. It can take me a little while to get back, but I do get back to everybody. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and